First, I want to commend you for your steadfast support for transparency of our government finances. It's so important. And your leadership throughout the pandemic when we received that massive influx of federal dollars to the state, that need to make sure that regardless of where those taxpayer dollars come from, we are always looking after the people's money. So important. And so kudos to you and your team for your ongoing commitment to taxpayers. And along that line, we've seen you out there actively recruiting qualified auditors for your office to best protect our tax dollars. Because look, you are elected by the people. Thankfully, you're an actual auditor holding this position as our state's top fiscal watchdog. And you recognize that your staff needs to be specialized in finance and accounting. It's a tough climate to hire new employees, and what you've discussed, the path that your office has gone down to transform that recruitment process and the way you sort those positions, I think is a really good illustration of what can be done not only in the public sector but also in the private sector. So you have transformed those positions, you have enhanced your recruiting process, and yet I continue to hear you talk about you want the ability to have subpoena power. And you started to go down this path with Senator Brown, but can you give us an idea? Can you illustrate for us the impediments that you have faced in any audits where subpoena power would have enabled you to do your job better, to do a better job of protecting taxpayer assets?
Probably and thank you for the question and for the compliment, Senator. Probably the biggest one was done by my predecessor right before I came into office, and that was an audit of the state registry of electors, the SURE audit. And it was an audit that was requested by the then Secretary of State. And so when the audit was being performed, there was documentation that was needed in order to perform the audit and to complete and have a thorough audit report. Those documents never were received. And after going back and forth, legal departments, boxes of those documents were in fact received. However, most of the information, the useful information that was needed for the audit, was redacted. And again, all that occurred because there was no subpoena power to have that information. And that is one of the things that I'm most concerned with as we are going out and planning our next round of audits. And depending on who you may be auditing, they may not necessarily want you to look at some of the information that they have.
So, as chairman of committees here in the Senate, we have the ability to issue a subpoena, but there are safeguards. We can't just throw them out there like pieces of candy, right, at a parade.
Right. And
we have to go through a process, and there are safeguards so that they're not abused. Do you envision having any type of safeguard or process by which you would issue a subpoena?
I would not have a problem with them. I mean, quite frankly, subpoenas is something that I take very seriously. I'm going back to my law enforcement days. And if we are given subpoena power, we would be very respectful of that power. And if we abuse that power, then that power should be taken away.
Very good. Thank you. General, thank you, Mr. Chairman.